Where is Kawhi Leonard going during this offseason? Let's get into this. The Los Angeles Clippers definitely had a much better run this season than it did last season, but of course it didn't end up how they wanted to. They ended up losing in the Western Conference Finals, and Kawhi Leonard actually went down with an ACL injury, which finally just got reported that he got surgery on that ACL. Partially torn, which is not as bad of course, but either way it's an ACL. Now the first question that comes up after you heard that Kawhi actually officially had an ACL tear is how will he recover? Will he be the same player, or will he be a completely different player, not what he is now? Of course only time will tell, and we have to wait and see, but if I had to put in a guess at this point, I would say Kawhi is most likely going to be fine. He's not a guy that relies on his athleticism much. Obviously when he gets all the way to the basket, he has posterizing dunks, which requires athleticism, but mostly what he does is that those pull-up mid-range shots. He also hit those pull-up three-point shots. He can grade his own shot from that mid-range, also from the three-point range. He has that post turnaround fadeaway. He can also get all the way to the basket and dunk over you, but he doesn't necessarily do that a lot. He also gets all the way to the basket and just finishes around you with layup. He doesn't use his athleticism that much, so in that perspective I think he's going to be fine, but either way it's a partially torn ACL, and I don't even think that's going to affect his athleticism that much if it does at all. So I think long term he's going to be fine from this injury. But now let's talk about what makes Kawhi great. Why is Kawhi one of the best players in the NBA, and in my opinion the best player in the NBA? What does he do on the offensive end, the defensive end, and why is he so valuable to a team? Let's start off with his offensive abilities. So of course Kawhi Leonard's main attribute is his mid-range jump shot. He has a great post turnaround fadeaway, which is one of the most effective shots in the NBA in my opinion. Also he has a great pull-up mid-range jump shot, which he's basically automatic at, which is great for him. Also he extended his range all the way out to the three-point line where he wasn't able to do that before in his career, but now he completely mastered it, and he's shooting a very good percentage from three now, so he's also able to do that. He's also obviously able to get all the way to the basket, and he's sneaky athletic. People don't necessarily know that this guy's super athletic, and he's not insanely athletic, but he's definitely sneaky athletic and can get posterizing dunks like we've seen in the NBA. But also when he gets all the way to the basket, he's very elusive and can get around guys to make easy layups as well. He doesn't rely on his athleticism like I said before in the video. And also one thing that he struggled with in the past is he was a very good offensive player, but he wasn't able to pass the ball, and he didn't necessarily have the IQ when he was getting doubled or even triple teamed to find the wide open guy quickly enough to get him a wide open three or wide open dunk. But that's something that he's definitely improved on, and this previous season he was averaging the most assists that he had in his career. So that's something he's definitely constantly improving on, and I think after this injury he would even improve on that more. So of course Kawhi Leonard has made himself into a very prolific offensive player, but of course when you talk about Kawhi Leonard it doesn't stop there. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. He can literally guard positions 1 through 5. He always guards the opposing team's best player like we've seen throughout his whole NBA career. There was even that viral clip of when Kawhi Leonard was on the San Antonio Spurs. He came back into the game guarding LeBron James, and LeBron had an obvious look of annoyance because he didn't want to be guarded by Kawhi Leonard because he knows he was an absolute dominant defender. Kawhi is just a great defensive player. Of course he also won the Defensive Player of the Year before, which he definitely deserved. So when you're getting a guy like Kawhi Leonard on your team, of course you're getting a guy who's a leader for your team, and he's going to be the best scorer on your team. Is always going to require double teams that come onto him, but also on the other end he's going to defend the most effective player on the other team, and a lot of the times he's going to completely shut those players down. But if they're so good and so great that they're superstars in this league and you can't really completely stop him, he's going to do his best job at actually slowing them down. So when you're talking about a guy like this, of course every team in the NBA would want him, but not every team can get him, of course. Let's talk about the teams that are in contention to get Kawhi Leonard this offseason. So let's start with the Los Angeles Clippers. Of course him staying with the Clippers. I think at this point this is the most likely thing to happen, especially after he had that torn ACL. I think after you had an injury like that, you're more likely to stay with the team that you're already on and you're comfortable with. But let's talk about what the Clippers do well for Kawhi and what they don't do well. So of course the Clippers have one of the most talented rosters in the NBA. They have Kawhi Leonard of course, but around him they have Paul George, who is a very good all-star. He was a superstar. He kind of was playing like it in the playoffs. He was getting a lot better to where he was previously, but he is a little bit inconsistent with it. But either way, Paul George is at the very least a high-level all-star in this league. But besides those two guys, they have other really good players around him. Serge Ibaka is a really good player, but he wasn't available in the playoffs. Luke Kennard's a really good player in my opinion. Reggie Jackson was playing extremely well. Marcus Morris is a little bit of an underrated player in my opinion. He's really good as well. They just have very good players and a very talented roster around Kawhi Leonard. on the offensive end, but also on the defensive end. All these guys are great defenders as well, which made the Clippers one of the best defensive teams, maybe the best defensive team in the NBA last season. But the downside for the Clippers is, of course, the first season where they teamed up. Everybody expected that Clippers team to, at the very least, be a very good contender to make it to the NBA Finals and win that championship. But a lot of people thought the Clippers were the championship favorites in that first season, but they completely disappointed. They had a little bit of a rough time against the Mavericks, which nobody expected. They ended up winning 4-2, which is okay, but they had a little bit of trouble in that series, and Porzingis was hurt in that series, and a lot of people thought if Porzingis was healthy, the Mavericks actually had a really good chance at winning that series. But even after that, they were up 3-1 on the Denver Nuggets, and everybody expected that the Clippers are back, they can easily put them away, but they ended up actually blowing that 3-1 lead, which is a huge disappointment, just considering they blew a 3-1 lead. But also on top of that, a lot of people said, as I said before, that the Clippers were the championship favorites that season. So to lose to the Denver Nuggets, who not a lot of people thought had any chance, and also being up on them 3-1 was just a huge disappointment. And then flash forwarding to this season, the Clippers had a lot of trouble during the regular season. They kind of figured it out in the playoffs, but unfortunately, obviously Kawhi Leonard got hurt with that ACL injury. But either way, the Clippers weren't able to make it to the NBA Finals once again, when a lot of people didn't have expectations for them anymore, just based on how they blew that 3-1 lead in the previous season in the bubble. But either way, they still had a team talented enough to win an NBA championship this season, so I guess that's a little bit disappointing as well. So that's obviously the downsides of staying with the Clippers. Another upside though would be that the Clippers of course play in LA, and LA has obviously been a huge draw to Kawhi Leonard, that's where he grew up, and that's very important to him, so that's definitely a big factor for him as well, besides the actual teams. But other teams that could potentially be in the race are the New York Knicks, maybe the Golden State Warriors like they always are, and maybe the Miami Heat. There aren't too many other teams that are really in the running for him. Maybe you could say the Los Angeles Lakers, but I think that's a very big long shot for them. But let's start off with the New York Knicks. So what do they provide? So of course this previous season they finally figured it out. They had a pretty good organization, they have a good coach, they have good players on the court, they're finally starting to win, and also they're New York City. If you're a superstar in New York City, you're instantly the most popular player in the NBA. And maybe Kawhi Leonard likes that, or maybe he doesn't like that based on his personality, but whatever way, he would be the most popular player in the NBA, or at least in the top 2 or 3 if he went to the New York Knicks. And also if Kawhi Leonard went to the Knicks, you may say, oh, they're all young guys that aren't necessarily at their peak yet, which is true, but if Kawhi Leonard does go to the New York Knicks, he would definitely attract a lot of free agents to come to this New York Knicks team, and I could easily see him bringing another superstar with him. You're talking about the New York Knicks, what player wouldn't want to play for them in the Garden? Now of course the downside would be if you go to the New York Knicks, there's no guarantee that you're going to be an instant championship contender, but I would say most likely you will be, because if Kawhi's going to the Knicks, he's most likely going to attract another superstar. But even besides that, they've built a pretty good core in New York and have a pretty good organization that I think that will be fine long term and will be a championship contender instantly. But also another downside would be you're not in LA, of course, and that's something that was very important to Kawhi. But now let's quickly touch upon the Heat and also the Golden State Warriors. For the Heat, of course, if you go there, you have a pretty decent chance of bringing in a third superstar alongside Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo with Kawhi Leonard. You also have a little bit more of a situation going there where if you go there, you're an instant championship contender guaranteed, and it's not like the Knicks that you're most likely going to bring in another superstar, but it's not guaranteed. So it's a little more guaranteed and set in stone with the Miami Heat. And also if he were to go there, Kawhi Leonard, they could easily trade Bam Adebayo if they wanted to, or even Jimmy Butler, and get a better superstar if that's the route they wanted to go. And now let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. I think they have a great core and foundation there already, so if Kawhi was able to go to the Golden State Warriors, I think it's also, that would be even more set in stone than the Miami Heat, because they have Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson would be coming back healthy, Andrew Wiggins has been playing great, they have Wiseman, we'll see how he turns out to be, but they have a great coaching staff, they have a great organization, everything's there and set in stone for him, so I think that would be the safest place that he could possibly go to, but I don't know if that's necessarily what he wants. And obviously a big issue would be all those places are not LA, and that's obviously very important to him. But let me quickly touch upon the Lakers, as I mentioned before. Of course they are in LA, and Kawhi could stay in that comfortable situation that he is in now, but the issue with the Lakers is he had the chance to go to the Lakers, and he didn't want to play with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. He wanted to create something for his own with Paul George and the Clippers, so that's one thing that's going against them, but also I don't think the Lakers have the cap space. How would they? So that's a big issue as well. So overall, I think the most likely case scenario at this point is Kawhi Leonard is probably going to stay with the Clippers. Also, I hope and pray that he will go to the Knicks, but I don't know how likely that is, and we'll just have to see going forward what happens with Kawhi Leonard. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Where do you think Kawhi Leonard's going to go? You think he's going to stay with the Clippers, or you think he's going to go somewhere else like the Knicks, or maybe the Heat, or a Golden State Warriors, Lakers, whatever. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until next time, peace out, guys.